in 1607, the colonies, Virginia shows up, and then they start, figuring that out and expanding, creating different colonies, and then people start migrating, right? In England, in 1714, now there are other people in between King George the First and King James the Fourth, or King James the Fourth. So that's not important to me. I didn't see anything major in that time period. But what I want to highlight is between 1714 and through the 1700s, King George the First, King George the Second, because we're leading up to this Declaration of Independence, right? Okay, King George the First is not from England. He's the King of England. He's not from England. He doesn't speak English. King George the First and King George the Second are from Germany. This is very important. King George the First is the King of England. He never touches England. He never goes to England. He doesn't speak English. He doesn't give two craps about England. Okay? Does this make sense? Anybody getting this? Okay? King George the First does not care about England. I don't even think he went. He is from Germany. The only reason he's the King of England during this time period is because of the bloodline, not because of nationality. Does that make sense? The same is true for King George II. King George II was not born in England, but he's the King of England by bloodline. And last time I talked about this timeline, we told you that William the Conqueror was a regime change. And so all of these kings are successors, not of the ancient Anglo-Saxons where we would attribute the common law principles from, but these guys come from the bloodline of William the Conqueror, who is Norman French, okay? So King George I speaks no English. He speaks complete German, doesn't care about England, anything. King George II, born in Germany, speaks no English until he's about 40. Does not care about England, okay? During these time periods, let me see. No, that's not what I need. Anybody getting anything out of this? That's not, there we go. During this time period, between, that says 1727 from 1714 until 1760, because King George I and II don't care about England, they gave legislative sovereignty to Parliament. So there would be a period as a king where what you said became law. But because these two kings don't care about England, they gave legislative sovereignty to Parliament. Parliament is the legislative branch. That would just a mirror. We have Congress, which is the federal legislative branch. Your state has a legislative branch. They write statutes. Okay, well, King George I and King George II give legislative sovereignty over to Parliament. So that means Parliament can write whatever they want and call it law. Because remember, this is a monarchy, right? And actually, I wonder if I can pull it up that fast. Let's see, common law. Oh, yep, perfect. So 1714 to 1760, you got King George I, King George II. They're kings of England, but they're not English. And they want to make that very clear. They don't care nothing about England. So they speak German. King George II spoke German until he was about 40. Then he learned English. And I think King George II did eventually start going to England. I think he had to at one point. It was like, all right, I'll go. And so because they didn't care about England, they gave legislative sovereignty over to Parliament. So Parliament was in England just writing whatever they wanted. They say, yep, you owe us. We're going to write all these. Yeah, we don't care nothing about the common law of England. We don't do that here, sweetie. You know how many times you done heard that in your life? Oh, yeah, we don't do common law no more. Right? So I want to make a distinction. The Supreme Court of Wisconsin said in the 1900s that due process of law here. Due process of law is a principle from the Magna Carta in the 1215. Okay, so that is where we call due process of law would mean what it meant in ancient England before William the Conqueror, right? So Wisconsin's law is the common law of England. So Wisconsin says that due process of law does not mean the will of the legislator. It means according to the law of the land, including the Constitution with its guarantees and the legislative and act. That's not what I'm supposed to be reading. That's not what I wanted. I'm like, it sounds real good, but that ain't what I'm talking about. But it is true as well. Due process of law does not mean the will of the legislator. Here in England, it means the will of the legislator. It means whatever they want it to mean. It means according to the law of the land, including the Constitution, guarantee, legislation. Okay, no, that's not what I was looking for. I wonder where it's at. I really want to read it. Sorry. It's very good. Very good. I wonder if it's New York or Minnesota. It's a state Supreme Court. Let's go to New York. And then let's go to I don't have a Minnesota. I have Minnesota, but I don't have a tab for it. Yes. Perfect. Got it. All right. Supreme Court of New York said, although it be true that in England, Parliament is omnipotent. What does that mean? They're all powerful. Who is Parliament? Parliament is the guy who writes, the guys who write statutes, codes, regulations, ordinances. Okay. So they say, hey, it is true that in England, Parliament is omnipotent. What does that mean? That means King George I and King George II gave legislative sovereignty over to Parliament, the guys who write the statutes and the codes for England, right? And so they said, the Supreme Court of New York said in the mid-1800s that it is true that in England, Parliament is omnipotent. But that principle does not prevail with us. They said here, the sovereign and absolute power resides in the people. Right? So what does that mean? I mean, they can't write whatever and it magically can take away your right. If they can do that in England, we not with them no more. Right? If they can do that in London and the United Kingdom because they are under a monarchy, a supposed monarchy, and under this lineage of their monarchy, King George I, King George II, who didn't care about England, barely spoke English or didn't speak it at all, said, hey, yeah, y'all write for them and do what you need to do. We don't care, right? So problem number one, and I know I'm saying the same thing over and over, but we got to get this. King George II, King George I, not from England. They were born in Germany. They're only the King of England by blood. They did not care about England, and as a result, they gave legislative sovereignty over to Parliament in England. Okay? Now, why is this significant? Because I have a book here. This is my book, for those who have it already, The Discernment of the Vigil. It says, I cite a law book from the 1750s, which I learned today that book actually came out in the 1730s. That these people called Jesuits, born in the king's dominion, ordained under the pretended jurisdiction of Rome, and under a pretended act of parliament. What do these Jesuits do? Well, they took over the sovereignty of parliament. And instead of writing things that were according to the course of common law, they wrote things according to the course of civil law. And as a result, they started writing statutes, codes, regulations, and ordinances that took away the rights of the English people. And it is in this time period where you will get the rumblings of why they fought the Revolutionary War. Does that make sense? Does that sound like, oh, that kind of painting a picture for me, right? So they say King George I, King George II, not born in England. It was almost like they were waiting on the perfect opportunity to strike, and they said, oh, these boys don't like England? Perfect. Let me get up in there. You know what I mean? So they said, oh, yeah, we're in there. Yeah. So they probably went to these dudes and was like, oh, yeah, you don't need to be worried about little old England. You stay in Germany and don't worry about it. Let us take care of it. And we'll be writing things on your behalf. Okay? So they took over the legislative power of England during this time period. Okay? Good. I think I stressed that enough, right? I keep reiterating it because this is the part we never hear. I never heard about this. Never. I learned this on accident. I said, they didn't speak English. I was listening to somebody talk and they were like, oh yeah, King George I wasn't born in England. I was like, what do you mean he wasn't born in England? They said, yeah, he was born in Germany. And he spoke German. He was never in England. They didn't care nothing about England. Like, what do you mean they didn't care nothing about England? They're like, they're only king of England by bloodline. They would look over, if y'all hear stuff that they're finna start shooting. I live in the hood. I just want to let y'all know that. So there's fireworks, but there will be gunshots real soon. But King George I, these jokers didn't care nothing about England. And so the enemy waited for the perfect time to strike. And then you get these books I'm getting, and I'm like, oh yeah, these people called the Jesuits showed up out of nowhere under no actual authority of law. And they started writing rules, regulations, codes, and ordinances. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. Right? So they said they did this during at least in the 1730s. Who knows when they got there? I don't know. But these people called the Jesuits, born in the king's dominion, ordained by the pretended jurisdiction of Rome. Like, what do you mean the pretended jurisdiction of Rome? Okay, well, you know. Then they said under a pretended act of parliament. They said these people, Jesuits, are credited for turning the books of the law and proceedings of the court of justice into English. Right, so they rewrote all the stuff in favor of them and not in favor of the people. Right, we get that? All right. So we got these people right here. King George I, King George II. Okay, well, because I didn't know they were German, I didn't pay attention to this guy right here, King George III.